Let's discuss some post-flop tips that are going to go a long way to helping make sure you are not making the common errors that I saw my opponents making all over the place in the games that I played. First things first, do not overplay marginal made hands. If you've gone through the Cash Game Masterclass, you know marginal made hands are usually hands like top pair no kicker down to something like ace high. They're pretty good hands. They could win at Showdown if a little bit of money goes in the pot, but if a lot of money goes into the pot, they're probably beat. And you're going to find that for the most part, if one or two post-flop bets goes into the pot, your strong but non-premium hands like top pair bad kicker are usually good. But if a lot of money goes into the pot, 3 or more bets, their value goes down substantially. So you're going to find that whenever you are facing aggression with these hands, you do not want to raise. So many players in small stakes games, especially live, think that if they flop well, they should put in a raise so that they don't get outdrawn. And while it's true, whenever you do put in a raise, you will not get outdrawn as often. When you get action, you're usually going to be in terrible shape in a big pot. So you have to understand that sometimes you are going to get outdrawn. And that is okay. When someone bets and you have a marginal made hand, just call and go to the next betting round. Now, whenever someone checks to you, and you have a marginal made hand that you have decided that you want to bet, maybe the flop checked through and they checked you again on the turn, or maybe they checked you on the flop and you're supposed to bet very frequently, it is usually best to use a small or medium bet size, both from a GTO and an exploitative point of view, because if you bet big, a lot of the hands that you want to get called by will start folding. For example, if you have middle pair, no kicker, and you're going to bet it for value, as you should. We'll discuss thin value betting later. But say we do decide to bet middle pair, no kicker in a spot where it's clear the opponent's range contains a lot of weak hands. You don't want to pot it, because if you pot it, again, you're not going to get outdrawn very often, but you can't get called by very many worse hands. And if your opponents are anywhere near decent, they are going to make sure that they are checking with some hands that you beat. And, even in the 5-cent, 10-cent games that I played, some of the players were actually pretty decent. And if they're pretty decent, they're going to play well enough, and you have to make sure you're not trying to massively exploit someone who does not exist, right? And for the most part, you're going to want to play reasonably good, strong, fundamentally sound post-flop strategies until you know more about your opponents, which quite often you will not know a whole lot about your opponent's post-flop tendencies because you're not going to play with the same players all that often. Now, as you play with the same players more and more and more, especially in live poker, maybe you can start making pretty big exploitative post-flop plays. But for the most part, you're not really going to know what your opponents are going to do. So with marginal made hands, you usually want to put in 1 or 2 post-flop bets. And if you are facing aggression, you usually want to call and not raise. Things have been going reasonably well. Got a double up here. Got a double up down here. Up a little bit here, down a little bit here. Splashing around. We'll check behind. We could bet, whatever. I don't think it makes that much of a difference. On the turn, giving us a stone blank, I think we can probably bet for value/protection. I don't presume we're going to get check raise very often on the turn, although as you get check raise more often there, you have to be way less inclined to bet. All right, check back there, fold there. Again, another spot where maybe I'm supposed to just be raising. I'm not entirely sure. Here we have 2 pair, but clearly not a great 2 pair. We'll just let it check. Check, 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 check. Call a river bet if he bets. We've hopefully induced plenty of bluffs. Collect a little pot. That's good. Notice if we bet the flop and get check raise, it becomes pretty nasty, right? I think, though, in general, people are going to overfold 2 river shoves just across the board. And if that's the case, especially when you think their range is mostly marginal made hands, you want to be using big bets. Obviously, you want to consider your opponent's strategy and what their range looks like, of course. If you're bluffing into a lot of nut hands, then clearly that's not so good. But right there on this table where there were 2 kings on the board, my opponent's pretty unlikely to have a king, right? So if they're pretty unlikely to have a king, then, and I have all the kings, that's the spot where I think going for the big bet's pretty nice. This guy could easily have a 6. He snap checks turn. I'll check it back. This might be a spot where exploitatively I'm supposed to just go for value on the turn and the river. I'm sure from GTO point of view I'm supposed to check it back a lot. But we're not living in GTO world right here. This is obviously just a call. This is probably too thin on the river to bet, I think. Maybe it's not too thin. I don't know. Depends if he thinks I'm checking back a whole lot of ace-x. Some people get annoyed when people, it's called hit and run. Some people get annoyed whenever they get hit and run. Don't get annoyed when you get hit and run. Be happy about it. We'll just check this one. This is a board that's very good for the opponents. So this guy raised, I 3-bet, he called. I think we just have to bet and get our money in. Yeah, he's going to have a lot of kings. I think I'll just fold to this big flop bet immediately. Now, if he does have a hand like tens, I'm not sure we'll be able to get him to fold. So I think the play is just let it go check, check, and then try to get to the river. Try to get to the showdown. Now do we try to bluff him off of a hand like eights or nines or tens? And I don't think so. I think we just let it go check, check here. We are going to beat ace high sometimes. We'll beat like pocket sixes sometimes. 10-9 of diamonds. All right. All right. Good. Would you like to keep playing? He will raise this one. If this guy re-raises, I'll just not fold. I know it may sound a little bit optimistic with the king-queen, but this guy's clearly splashy. Yeah. Kind of saw this one coming, but whatever. You got to call. Fair flip. Looks like we're not going to win. When the guy's doing stuff like this with the ace-4, like, obviously you can't go around folding. I'm playing 60 minutes. We won $42. All right, good. Spots like this come up sometimes where someone's like clearly getting in there a lot, right? And you have to be willing to gamble with them. Once you put in the raise when they jam, if you think their range is much, much, much wider than normal, you just can't fold. Sometimes they get you. Obviously, you don't love it with the king-queen, but king-queen suited is a pretty good hand. Should we 3-bet the king-8, king-9 suited or just call? I think you can mix it up. All right, this guy limps, I raise, this guy 3-bets me. We'll definitely call in position with the queen-jack suited. Look at this. Raise, call, all in. All right. Not a great flop for me. Should we ever float here against a small bet? I don't know. He checks, though, which is nice. What would he possibly check here? It's going to be a lot of ace high, I guess. Problem is he's probably not trying to fold it, right? So we'll just check, check, and try to improve. He could just have aces, right? That's a hand that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of annoying that we turned the jack. This does not feel like a good spot. I mean, if he checks river, I'm just going to check behind. There may be value in betting in this spot, but I think it's fine to just not go for it. All right. And, I mean, who knows if the guy would have called me on the river there. I have no idea. I have no idea what his strategy was. And if you have any backdoor equity or just like equity against middle pair, which very often you will, you should definitely be going for those little bets. Don't want to raise this ace-2 offsuit. Let's try it. I'm going to use a big raise. This is kind of similar to that, well, another earlier spot where I squeeze with the king-9 offsuit. If I get limp re-raise, obviously I can fold. If I get limp called, well, you know, it's not great, but whatever. Raise, we will 3-bet. 2 callers. We have top pair, no kicker. All right, this is where you have to be a little bit careful because you're going to run into better aces a lot. So I think we just want to check and see what develops. I'm rooting for them all just to check through. That would be fantastic. We'll just keep checking. Very, very nice hand just to check in, then check call. So I bet flop this guy calls, no problem. Turns king, which is pretty bad. I really don't want a king or a queen to come. In this hand, this guy raised, I 3-bet, he calls. I bet flop, he calls. I think we can get value on the river. And here we've done the best job we possibly can to induce bluffs. So I think this is fine. And this is a value bet on the river, trying to get called by worse jacks and under pairs. If he raises me, I will fold reluctantly. Brutal. Say I'm going to fold. Am I going to fold? This is brutal over here too, because this guy's going to bet the turn with a lot of queens. All right, so we'll fold this one. This is a tough spot. All right. Snap jams me on the river. I mean, I feel like this is supposed to just be an automatic fold, but I'm really tempted to call for some reason. You know what? I'm going to call. I don't love it. We're going to be showing a lot of draws, I think. I mean, obviously, we don't have queen a lot. I don't know. I'm going to call. All right. Good. There were a lot of busted draws there. When there's a lot of busted draws, you got to be a little call happy. And very importantly, whenever your range is underrepresented, that's an important point. Like right there, whenever I check flop and then check call turn, my range looks much weaker than it actually is. But you've seen some of the other parts of this video where it's like actually pretty hectic. So you want to make sure that you do not overload yourself such that you can't handle the hectic times that will inevitably occur. So make sure you're not playing too many tables, but at the same time, you want to play as many tables as you reasonably can. Top pair, no kicker, out of position with a 10 of hearts. I think checking or betting is both fine. Probably do want to check some kings. This is probably one of my worst kings. Well, this guy 3-bets me again. So we just 4-bet this guy, and he folded. I don't think we want to 4-bet this hand. I think I'd rather do it again with like the ace-10. So we'll call and see the flop. This is a flop where if he has me, we are going to lose all of our money. If he checks, do I bet? I think I check it back if he checks. Because I really want to keep him in with whatever garbage he has. I have no clue if this guy's range is overly wide or overly tight. It's very, very muddled in my head. I really don't know what I'm looking at. King's terrible. Because he may bet like king, queen on the flop small like he did. King's really bad. Please check, sir. Please check. If he keeps betting, it's actually really rough. I mean, I got to call, right? Ooh, ooh, that's lucky. Let's keep checking here. Maybe I'm supposed to go for value. Check, call, check, check, turn, check, river. I'm going to bet tiny here to try to get him to do something dumb. He just had nothing, though. Stone, airball. Maybe he had the queen 10 exactly, and we got lucky, but as you see, guy's range is definitely wide, right? This guy's taking forever up here. You may ask why check top pair. You should always check some top pairs in multi-way pots, I think. And once we check call flop, check, check, turn is fine. Then on the river, I definitely think our hand's good enough to go for value, but there's also merit in giving your opponent every chance to bluff. And again, you want to likely be checking top pairs in most scenarios sometimes. Usually the worst top pairs are pretty good ones to check, and that's one of the worst ones. I mean, I suppose I do maybe have some slightly weaker king X who are under the gun. This guy just ripped it in on me. All right. We're getting distracted. Okay. Clearly, I should have played this. Clearly. All right, this guy raises. I would call a flop bet with the backdoor draws, but once he checks, we'll check, check. Is there any merit in bluffing? Probably not. I mean, we will get ace high to fold sometimes, but we'll just check. Now on the river, I think we can definitely go for value. I think this is good enough to go big. He can easily call with a 10 or like pocket 9s or an 8. I really don't expect to get check raised very often. We do get called. Good. Then somehow checked it down. I mean, it may sound bad that I'm laughing, but it's kind of funny, right? I mean, they should be going for value in these spots, and they're just not putting money in the pot. The opponent seems to just not want value. I don't understand why. If we had a gut shot, or if we had a backdoor flush draw here, I'd probably bet, but with no backdoor flush draw, I think I'm happy enough just check folding. Here I raise, got called by imposition. I think it's fine to check this hand with the 9s. I mean, it's not it's obviously vulnerable to being outdrawn, but I think it's okay just to like check fold. May seem a little bit weak, but it's just so easy to be beat in this spot. If this guy calls the $2 bet, I would probably call. Maybe I'm supposed to raise. Do I ever put in a raise here? That'd be fun. Maybe I just do it. No, it's just so easy to be beat. That feels a little bit tight. There's a chance I'm supposed to do something there. It's easy to get distracted, especially when you're trying to commentate. That said, commentating is good because it makes you think out what you're doing instead of just like autopiloting, right? A lot of people just mindlessly click buttons, and if they instead talked out everything they're doing, then they would not mess up nearly as often. I'm going to check back this flop if they checked me. This is a spot where both players are going to have a lot of nines, and obviously if the king, I lose to the king, so we'll just check it back. We really just don't want to see a ace, queen, jack, 10 on the turn. If they check to me again, I think we can probably go for a little value. Checking it back would be fine too. Like, as your opponents are better, you should be way more inclined to check the turn, I think. They did check very quickly, which is always a little bit weird, but I'm not going to read anything into that until we have a good reason to. Raise here, we can 3-bet or call. Same guy who stacked me. Sometimes people will presume that you are on tilt if they stack you. Maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. Top pair no kicker is a good hand to check call. With any luck, the guy will bluff it off. Kind of rough whenever he starts off with a big bet, but we're gonna be calling down with this one too. Check, check, turn, check, check, river. Well, check, turn, and if he checks back, I will check the river and check call. I want to do everything I can to induce bluffs here. 4 on the river. Doesn't change much. I'm just happy to get to a relatively cheap showdown with this hand. I have no clue why the guy did not go for value there. That was terrible.